are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the College Loop Podcast. I'm Dylan Larck, YouBoyTech on Twitter. Here to talk to you all today about yesterday's massive win over ULM. Auburn gets the dub 48-14, doing it in a perfect fashion because I picked that exact score. So I'm going to brag about that as much as humanly possible, as I usually do whenever I get something completely right. Something of note, yesterday was a massive game for many reasons. You saw the first career 1,000-yard season out of Jarquez Hunter. You saw the offense finally offer opportunities for the run game, as well as a lot of nice things to go into the last two games of the season with Cam Coleman, with this wide receiver core. The offense looked great. But again, I'm not going to get too bug about all of that because of the fact that Auburn does have two games, and I do not think Auburn particularly has a chance to win those. Of course, I think Auburn always has because of the talent level that they have on this current roster. But looking at this game yesterday, I mean, you have to talk about the fact Auburn had 200-yard receivers. You saw a glimpse of what next year should look like. Condre Lambert-Smith had 6 catches for 140 yards, got himself a touchdown. Cam Coleman, 8 catches, 100 yards, and 3 touchdowns. One of those coming in an absolute awesome catch. A one-handed grab that I thought was going to get overturned into an out-of-bounds, like called out of bounds, but it was not. Malcolm Simmons, 6 catches, 63 yards, and Rivaldo Fairweather also got a couple of catches himself. All added up to Peyton Thorne only missing on 10 passes, 22 of 32 for 286 yards, with a program record 5 touchdowns yesterday for Peyton Thorne. But I think the biggest thing to really look at with this game is the fact that you saw the first ever inclusion of Walker White. He had a pretty decent game for the time he was in, 2 of 5 for 18 yards, had a beautiful throw to Condre Lambert-Smith for, I believe, his first completion. And he also had 4 carries for 20 yards. Well, 4 carries for 18 yards, but he lost 2 on one of those runs. You saw a glimpse, a shimmer of what Auburn should look like going in the next year. And I've been saying this. I think that I said this yesterday on the War Report. The big picture that Hugh Freeze wanted us to look at was not putting someone over Peyton Thorne in the season, but maybe it was putting Walker White above Hank Brown and Holden Geriner, because I believe Auburn might lose 3 scholarship quarterbacks at the end of the season. I think you're looking at potentially Hank Brown going to the transfer portal. I think you're also looking at Holden Geriner into the transfer portal. I think that's something we all pretty much see coming, and we saw that coming since the beginning of the season. And then Peyton Thorne, of course, number of years of eligibility remaining for him. So you're going in the next year. Walker White might be your only guy returning from this team to next year's team. So you're looking at next year, and every Auburn fan in the world has already moved on to the 2025 football season. You're ignoring this one. You're going to appreciate all the other sports going on for the remainder of this athletic year. And then next year, you're already ready for that football season because we've all been ready for that since, I want to say, Oklahoma, or Cal, one of those two. You were like, oh, it seems already a sham. So Cam Coleman, massive game, 8 catches, 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. I said this, I tweeted this out. This was the Cam comeback game. Because you're so worried of the players that you could lose in the portal that you have to maintain those younger guys. The defense is set. The defense is set for years. So you have DJ Durkin. You have all those coaches that you need to keep on staff going into next year. You cannot let a single one of those guys go like anywhere. If the NFL calls, hang it up. Don't let those guys leave because this defense is built for championships. This is a championship caliber defense that we are watching this season. Jay Crawford is a true freshman, has looked better than any other true freshman corner I've ever seen play for Auburn. You have guys like Caleb Harris, DeMarcus Riddick, who has been outstanding all season. Malik Blockton's been great all year. Morris Williams, whenever he gets in, he has been outstanding. You have all these young guys, these young pieces on defense that all you have to do is just get the offense to just be, I don't want to say average, because stat-wise, this offense hasn't been bad all season. It's been the turnovers. you have to get the offense on pace or on track to not turn over the football. And if Auburn had, I want to say, if you didn't have 4 interceptions in one game, it's another win. If you didn't have 3 interceptions in another game, that's another win. And of course, that's an if scenario, but you don't want to look at it like that. But Auburn is that much closer to having 4 extra wins on their season. Auburn should be on, if you just flip the one-score games, Auburn has 3 extra wins on the schedule, and we're looking at a 7-win team right now. That's the craziest part, is Auburn should already have 7 wins going to the last 2 games of the season if you just flip-flop the one-score games. So looking forward, you have the offense that needs to be fixed. Jarquez Hunter's gone. You have Keandre Lambert-Smith is going to the NFL. Jarquez Hunter, I said gone. He's going to the NFL. Peyton Thorne's gone. You have a few of the guys across the board who are going to be, this is their last year of football, more than likely. And, of course, you have a few guys that, I'm terrified that Auburn might lose a good chunk of people in the portal this year. That's something that scares me, because I want to say, out of the entire 2024 recruiting class, the one that scares me the most is Perry Thompson. And you saw at the end of the game, Auburn tried to force feed Perry Thompson, but some of the passes either were inaccurate or just uncatchable, which synonym there. But Perry Thompson has been wanting to get more involved in this offense throughout the entire year. The War Report reported this. Perry Thompson was asked to redshirt this season, and he flat out just said no. So if you're wanting to keep Perry Thompson, not only are you going to have to find ways to get him involved in the offense right away, but you're going to have to maybe single him out over other guys that you have starting. Malcolm Simmons had a great game. I don't expect him not to get any more catches than he did. Cam Coleman, Keandre Lambert-Smith are going to be heavily involved in the passing game. But Robert Lewis getting a fader out to the end zone, I think you need to put Perry Thompson on that. And it just terrifies me beyond end that Auburn could be losing a lot of those players that they just have not used on offense. I don't think Bryce Kane is gone. I think Malcolm is back. I think Cam, with this game, he kind of got shown, hey, you're the focal point next year. All those catches that are going to Keandre Lambert-Smith, all those receiving yards, all those touchdowns are going to Keandre Lambert-Smith. That's going to Cam Coleman next year. And then Malcolm Simmons should be able to fit into the wide receiver 2 role, and then Perry Thompson on the other outside. That's how it should look next year. But with how Auburn has mismanaged the redshirt scenario, Perry Thompson can't redshirt this year. He's played in more than 4 games. So now you've wasted a year out of a 5-star wide receiver that I think maybe you've irritated him enough to where he might see an out. That's what scares me the most about this, about how the redshirting has gone with this team. But, that's really the biggest negative of this game. Auburn gave up a massive touchdown at the end of the game. J.C. Hart tripped and fell. But it was all for me getting a perfect prediction on the game. But I'm super excited about this defense going into next year. I'm super excited about it. And I think that Auburn played an outstanding game defensively. A couple missed tackles. And Jaron Thompson tried to knock the ball out of someone's hands, and that ended up just being a massive gain for them. Gave up, again, the big play and gave up a long drive as well. But there's so many positives to take from this game. And, of course, this is La Monroe. Looking ahead, you have Texas A&M. Last home game of the year. I want to say it's a 6:45 kick. I don't know if they ever – I know they announced it, but I don't know. Some people were talking about they maybe have changed it. But you have an opportunity. 6:30. So 6:30 kick. You have a night game in Jordan Stadium. Something that I think Auburn's only had once this season against Samford. You have one more opportunity to lock in some of these recruits. Right now, the game is past now. Looking ahead, Auburn has a number 5 recruiting class in the nation right now, which is good for 4th in the SEC. Auburn has this one last chance to get some of these visits in, to get some of these guys to stay committed, to get these guys locked in, get ready for signing day, which, again, signing day is on December 4th, which means there's 13 days left in November, and you have 4 days before then. So 17 days. We're 17 days away from National Signing Day. And Auburn, I mean, you have a lot of these guys locked in. I don't think anyone signed for the early signing period. So you have guys like Jared Smith, Malik Autry, Deuce Knight, Anquan Fegans, Eric Winters, Jacayla Falk, Jordan Crawford, Nathaniel Marshall, all those guys. And, I mean, I think Auburn wanted to bring in a couple more offensive players. I think they missed out on a couple of running backs. They have Alvin Henderson coming in, who's an absolute stud. You have 2 wide receivers coming through. You have a couple of tight ends. But I think Auburn kind of missed out on some guys that they wanted, which is going to happen in recruiting. But this class is outstanding. And I said 2 receivers. They have 3 receivers. I forgot about Sam Turner there for a little bit. So you have opportunities to fill the holes of guys that are leaving from the high school ranks, which is what you want to do. Every great program in college football has not been built through the portal. It has been built through high school. Alabama and the Saban dynasty, that was all built through high school recruiting. Of course, they had some great transfers that came through. Jamison Williams was one of those guys who had a good season for Alabama whenever he transferred in. But all those other guys, Mark Ingram, Derrick Henry, those foundational pieces were all built through the high school ranks, developed, and became stars later on. Mark Ingram, to be determined by me, I think he's one of the worst Heisman winners in this century. But regardless, all those guys were brought in from the high school. And you talk about Clemson. Clemson doesn't recruit the portal, and they won 2 national championships from all their guys they got from high school. Ohio State, this year, being an outlier, they had to really go heavy in the portal to be as competitive as they are now. But you're seeing that's the way Hugh Freeze wants to take it. And, of course, next year he opens up more than likely number 1 on everyone's hot seat list. I don't think there's anyone in the world who's not going to have Hugh Freeze on the hot seat. He's definitely going to be coaching to keep his job going into the 2026 season if you have the same issues this year. But with guys coming in like this, I mean, this defensive roster next year is going to be absolutely ridiculous. I've already said it before. Malik Autry, who's Auburn's second 5-star in this class, just by 24/7 rankings, not by composite. I've watched some film on him. I feel the same way about Malik Autry that I felt about Malik Blockton last year. I think he's an X-factor defensive lineman right away. I don't think you keep Autry off the field. So I'm super excited about him. And, of course, a few of those other guys. Eric Winters, an absolute stud. He's a quarterback and a safety. And he had like an 80-yard touchdown in the 3rd round of the playoffs, like on Friday. So absolute stud there. So I'm excited to see this class develop even further. And I'm also terrified that something stupid is going to happen next year. It's going to turn this into another disaster. And, of course, it's a vicious cycle of just going between the positives and the pros and the cons, the positives and the negatives of what this could be. Because this is something I heard Mike G talk about from today's live stream was Auburn is not a 7-5 team, but they have 7-5 coaching. So, and Auburn's not even 7-5. Auburn right now is 4-6 with an opportunity to either finish out and go to a bowl game, win out, and beat Texas A&M, beat Alabama, go 6-6, and we all get to travel to Birmingham together and watch Auburn take on a G5 school. Which, I mean, not opposed to that whatsoever. You want to be able to have those extra bowl practices, especially with the early enrollees from the 25 class. But you also have opportunities to get at least one upset, finish 5-7, or you just don't compete whatsoever and you end up going 4-8. That's Auburn's 3 options right now. And, of course, I fully believe Auburn's going 4-8 this year. And the fact that you're going 4-8 and still potentially will bring in a top 5 class is a little something to be excited about. And then again, that's kind of the difference between the last era and this era of Auburn football is the recruiting is good enough to where everyone is still hopeful of what Auburn's going to be in the future. It was never like recruiting in the back half of the 2020 top 25 and barely passing by, not really developing your guys coming through. Of course, I can't really say Harsin had enough time to develop the guys he had. And now you were last year, you were top, I want to say you were in the top 10. You were number 7 last year, 2022 or 2023 class that came in. You were in the top 15, and 2024 class. Now you're looking at top 5. 26 class right now is in the top 10. And that's kind of dropped a little bit as those guys have started to make their commitments around the place in 2026 class. But that's the big picture there is you're recruiting like you were not 4-8, but you are still who your record says you are for Auburn football. But a lot of positives to take from this game. Of course, this week we're going to be previewing the A&M game all week. I am terrified of Marcel Reed. Auburn has struggled all year long with those dual threat quarterbacks, and Marcel Reed's different. I had no idea who the kid was until Connor Wegman got taken out of the game, and Marcel Reed stepped in, and he looked. I think he's either a sophomore or he's a freshman, but either way, he does not play like it. He plays like a guy who should be on a Heisman frontrunner list next year. That's how well he has played going into this year. I think that his only issue, he's not played the full season. So I don't know. Hopefully people are giving him the respect he deserves. Because he's different. I think he's actually played good enough to put Connor Wegman in the transfer portal list, which, of course, that's a whole other issue we're going to be talking about throughout the remainder of this season is transfer portal quarterbacks Auburn's going to be going for. As I said before, I think I think Hank Brown, I think Holden Gerner, and I think and I know Peyton Thorne's gone. But I think Auburn's losing 3 scholarship guys. You're bringing back Walker White. You're bringing in Deuce Knight. You got to pick up at least 2 transfer quarterbacks. And one of those guys has to be your solidified starter, X-factor level quarterback, or at least, I don't even want to say elite, good. If a good quarterback is there in the portal and you grab him and you are solidified that he is going to run your offense and you work with him, you develop him over the season, you got that. You have a guy. And you usually bring another veteran guy who can just be there to go in just ahead of Walker White, just so he can develop even further. So right now, I think the only guy in the portal is Thomas Castanelos from Boston College, which I'm not opposed to him because he's a gamer, he's a playmaker. My only issue is he's a little on the shorter side of things, but I don't think that really that wouldn't really affect how good he's been. If he was good at Boston College, I think he can be good pretty much anywhere. Of course, lost his job to injury. But as the season goes along, of course, after the Alabama game, the transport conversation is going to be pretty much the biggest thing we talk about. But that pretty much does it for my football conversation. We're going to go over to basketball after a break. I'm going to go through those comments. Weakest link, thanks for tuning in. They looked great, but it was only L.A. Monroe. Just wish the same offense could show up against SEC competition. Based on what Hugh Freeze has talked about in his press conference, this is what he's expecting to see the remainder of the season. The offense we saw against La Monroe is the offense that Hugh Freeze wants to run. He wants to have a heavy passing game with a splash of the run game. Because you saw a 100-yard rusher, you saw 200-yard receivers, you saw 5 touchdowns getting thrown by the quarterback. Auburn's issue all year has not been the inability to get that offense on the field, to get it to play that consistently. So going forward, that's the offense he wants to see. He even said in his press conference that looking forward, he wants to be able to execute on third downs like he did. He wants to be able to do the things we saw with the receivers. He wants to be able to have a heavy emphasis on getting the ball to Cam Coleman. He wants to be able to find Keandre Lambert-Smith as a safety blanket and get him going down the field. Because, I mean, Keandre Lambert-Smith had a great touchdown grab versus La Monroe as well. So, I mean, this is the offense he wants to see. So, hopefully you get to see the remainder of the season, but also you're playing against a good A&M defense and a pretty mediocre Bama defense. But that Bama defense is being played against in Bryant-Denny Stadium, which Auburn has not won in since you had an actual superhuman there at your quarterback position. Teresa, how you doing, Teresa? Welcome back. Jeff Tink, what's going on? Teresa again, Perry won't leave. He will slide into KLS's spot next year. See, that's the thing. I think he could because I think Malcolm has played so well that he could slide into anyone's spot. Malcolm could easily play the outside or the slot receiver just like KLS can. So I think you're going to see Malcolm and Cam kind of be the emphasis going forward if they can't get Perry Thompson to return. So I'm not. I'm not too. If I had to have a confidence level, like a 1 through 5, kind of like how I think 24/7 does 1 through 5. I don't know. My confidence level, 1 being the least confident, 5 being the most confident. I'd probably be at a 2 right now because I think the kid's frustrated. He has to get redshirted. He said no, and the offense still they did not implement him anymore into the offense. If I'm not mistaken, I just want to look at his stats on the year. I just don't think he's been getting any catches that he should be getting. I think on the year he barely even has over 200 yards receiving on the year. 5 catches, 126, and 1 touchdown. And they passed the ball to him. I want to say, I don't have the exact stats in front of me. I think he got at least 5 targets against ULM. Teresa will be there for the A&M game. So say hello to Teresa if you see her. I would not be in that game. I kind of gave up on going to the games after what I saw on the field. I'm just going to watch it on my television. Ernest Vaughn, flip Naeem, and get Maki from the portal. I am still holding out hope that Auburn will flip Naeem Offord. I would give Auburn the number 1 player of the state of Alabama. We'll give them 9 total players from 9 out of the top 10 players from the state of Alabama. I saw that graphic up and ready to go if he indeed does flip. Jay Flowers, what's up? Does DA stay? I really want him to start, but Cobb is a dog. Honestly, with Damari Alston, I'm not in the least bit terrified of him potentially transferring. Damari understands that going into next year, he's going to take over the Darquez Hunter role. He is going to be the workhorse back. Jeremiah Cobb, I think, is going to stay. He's still going to be a major emphasis in this offense going next year. He's going to take on the Damari role. And I think both these guys kind of combine to be a nice 1-2 punch. And then you get to see a splash or a sprinkle of Alvin Henderson going in the next year. I don't even know if Auburn really needs to pick up any transfer portal running backs. I think you're pretty set with these 3 going forward. So I think Damari Alston he loves Auburn too much to really transfer out. So I'm still on board with Damari Alston being the number 1 running back last year. Also, I think Bryce Kane is one of those that's going to be it. Even Malcolm said he is the fastest other than J.C. Hart. Is the one that's going to be it. So, for saying I jump at the transfer. Yeah, Bryce Kane, from the get-go, Bryce Kane was always going to be the guy that had to develop the most. I mean, starting off in the year, I thought it was going to be Malcolm. I thought Malcolm had the most to hone in going forward. I was dead wrong about that. But now I know it's Bryce Kane. Going forward, I mean, Bryce Kane is the fastest wide receiver, I want to say, out of the 4. He just had some issues early in the season, drops and stuff like that. Kind of it got too cluttered in the depth chart, so he got to get pushed back. I believe Bryce Kane is going to redshirt if he has not already, and I'm going to see a lot more of him going to next year. Malcolm can just stay inside. All 3 of them need to be on the field. Completely agree about that. And that's the big thing right here. They have to know who the quarterback will be next year. It's gonna be a weird offseason yet again. Hopefully we don't see the same thing we saw 2 years ago where it was just a constant revolving door of different guys that potentially could get picked up. I remember Grayson McCall was like the big one for the longest time. Casey Thompson was in the mix for a while, and then a few other guys came around, and then we somehow found our way back down to Peyton Thorne. Don't know how that happened. It's like a vortex, not picking anybody up, and then all of a sudden you get stuck with who you got and didn't do anything to change that. Yes, going to the A&M game. It's my daughter's last home game. She graduates in May. Congratulations to her. I will also be getting my master's in May from ULM. So a lot of graduating going on in May. So I'm gonna go to a quick break. On the side of this break, we're gonna talk about Auburn basketball because they have a commit coming in that just happened a few hours ago, actually. And of course, we're gonna preview their game tomorrow versus North Alabama, and then we'll recap it for the Tuesday show. So stay around, and we'll be right back after this short break.
Are you tired of having to rummage through just clothes after clothes after clothes looking for something to wear? Are you tired of your friends making fun of you for your terrible fashion sense? Well, do we have the shirt for you? Go to thewarreport.com, get your laptop out and do it right now. Go to the shop and get your very own Feelin' Loopy t-shirt as well as your college loop hat, and you can get both of them for only $25 each. plus shipping and handling, of course. But with that, now back to your regular scheduled program.
Of course, that's available on thewarreport.com. First page of the shop is the College Loop hat. Second page, Feeling Loop t-shirt. It's one of the great ways you can support the show over here. But the best way you can support the show is, of course, by liking, commenting, and subscribing. We're over 900 subscribers, which means we're well on our way to 1,000 subscribers. I cannot thank y'all enough for getting us to that milestone. So going into OJ Flowers, you go to AUM. So does my girlfriend. I grew up in Pike Road, Montgomery. I grew on the outskirts of Montgomery. I got my undergrad from Auburn, and of course, now I'm getting my master's from AUM. So yeah, I do go to AUM. I'm kind of a mixture of a on-campus and online student in the mix. So Auburn Basketball picked up another commit today, picking up, and it's now getting Sebastian Williams Adams. 6'8" power forward, 230 pounds, number 10 overall power forward in the class, number 3 overall player in the state of Texas, number 40 national player in the nation. Highly versatile four-man, specializing in getting downhill as a face-up driver. So a absolute menace on both sides of the court because he has a 7'2" wingspan, which is absolutely ridiculous. With this commit, Auburn Basketball has now jumped from they were at 36 like 2 hours ago, not at 14 with their third commit. Of course, Caden Magwood, Simon Walker, 2 other 4-stars have indeed signed their letter of intent to come to Auburn. So now you have a forward to join them. I don't think Auburn Basketball is finished in the slightest recruiting because you got to recruit an entire roster going to next year. I think you're looking at maybe a couple more freshmen to come through. And then, of course, you got to fill those empty spots in with some portal players. And Bruce Pearl's even talking about this. I mean, his roster right now is built to win now because next year you are going to have a whole new look Auburn. You're going to, fully because you're going to be in Nike gear for one thing. It's a little selling point to some recruits. You're going to be wearing Nike next year. But you're going to have a few spots. I want to say out of, is it 15 players? I want to say out of 15 scholarship players, you have 13 senior to fifth year senior players, and then you have 2 true freshmen coming through. So yeah, you're gonna have a few holes in that, especially if Todd Pettiford just continues to play as great as he has, because you might lose him after the year, and then maybe you'd get Ja'Kai Howard to come back if he ends up panning out well for the Tigers. Currently, Auburn plays tomorrow at 7:00 p.m. Central Standard Time against North Alabama, number 5 Auburn. I believe that probably by this from tomorrow, there'll probably be a different ranking. I think the AP poll for basketball comes out Monday around noon. So, of course, they're going to probably either – I don't even know if they really move Auburn. There was a few other basketball games that happened this past week. So, North Alabama, pretty decent team. Took down Air Force 73-57, beat Point 94-58, UT Martin 87-69, and then lost in overtime to Samford 97-96. Across the board, this team shoots 47% from the field. They shoot 37% from the 3-point line. And overall, they scored around 87 points a game. Again, this is another one of those games where I'm fully expecting Auburn to win this game. The true challenges are going to come towards. I think next Monday is the 25th, if I'm not mistaken, where Auburn's going to be entering the Maui Invitational, and then you got Iowa State, and then the day after that, if you win that game, you got another guy, and I think you could have yourself playing against like North Carolina in this. So I've fully forgotten the Maui Invitational and everybody who is in it right now. I've never forgotten the Maui Invitational, but I definitely forgot all the teams that are involved in it this year. But you have opportunities to play teams like Memphis, UConn. UConn's the one I was talking about, and North Carolina, of course, as well. So if Auburn finds a way to win out, you could beat teams like UConn and North Carolina going forward. And then right after the Maui Invitational, you have to turn around and you have to come home, you chill out for a little bit, and then, of course, you got to turn around and go straight to North Carolina and take on the Duke Blue Devils. So Auburn has a tough stretch of games after this one, so best to take care of business, and I think they will. CBS got Auburn at number 2 for what that's worth. Number 1 in King Palm, which they've earned that after a massive win over Houston, and probably what has been thus far the game of the year. Even though I think Kentucky Duke might be 2 after that. But yeah, Auburn has a tough stretch of games after this. After this one, Iowa State, potentially a few other blue bloods involved. And then after that, you have Duke, Richmond, Ohio State, Georgia State. You got Purdue, Monmouth. And then you start your SEC play next year in 2025 on January 4th, take on Missouri. It's a tough stretch of games, no matter what in the SEC. And, of course, the Iron Bowl basketball is going to be probably college game day for 2 things. So, I mean, going forward, Auburn basketball is taking care of business as we know they would. Women's basketball has a game this week, taking on Oregon in just a couple of days, 3 days, November 20th. So, of course, we'll be previewing that on the Tuesday show because that will be, I think the game would be on Thursday. So, yeah, Tuesday show will be previewing that game, discussing that. But, yeah, massive game there on the 20th. I mean, my days are all mixed up on the weekends. Let me make sure that I'm completely right about that. November 20th is on Wednesday. So, yeah, previewing that on the Tuesday show. So, massive game for Auburn. We are talking about the Little Rock game on Friday on the weird scheduling we had. So, yeah, massive games for Auburn, traveling to Oregon, a top 25 team. Let's see. Before we move on to baseball and softball, I'm just going to call out all those commits Auburn brought in because I did not do my due diligence last week. Brad Browning, not basketball related, but where do you guys think Juju winds up now? I think the crystal balls have come in for Juju to go to Colorado. Not mistaken, there was like a massive revolving door of quarterbacks that just happened just yesterday, I think. Hassan Longstreak decommitted from A&M, flipped to USC. Juju Lewis decommitted from USC. I think right now, not mistaken, crystal balls are all pointing for him to go to Colorado. I remember Indiana got a couple of looks. Auburn's so far out of it. So they have Deuce Knight, not looking in their guys at quarterback, fully trying to get Deuce Knight to stay with the Tigers, which I think he will. So going forward, not only is Auburn basketball and Auburn football recruiting having themselves a year, Auburn baseball and softball pick up some massive classes. Auburn 2025 class, they currently have 4, 8, 9 commits coming through, some top level athletes. I mean, you have Ethan Bingaman, Clayton Narma, Taylor Belza, Wade Shelley, Fleming Hall, Caden Combs, LJ Cormier, Mason McCrane, and Brady Wilson all committed to the Tigers going forward. So a massive class for them. Of course, I'm not going to be the best one to go into details and scouting reports on those guys. Out of all the major sports, I would say baseball probably my least knowledgeable, but I do know the sport pretty well. I'm just not a scout when it comes to that stuff. But softball, on the other hand, Auburn has picked up some major players over there in this class and signed a bunch of good ones. Chris and Kate Malvo, the Malvos have done an absolute great job thus far. Team is on a high. Super excited for that season going forward next year. But you picked up a lot of great girls. Delaney Alma, a number 21 overall recruit in the country per extra inning softball. You also brought in Charlie Butler, a pitcher of the year in 2023 and 2024 in the Big Bend. Of course, you also got Britton Godfrey, a 3-time All-State honoree. Milena Lostari, I'm definitely getting a lot of these names wrong, 36, ranked number 36 in the country for utility athletes in the 2025 class. Ava Ratliff, ranked number 13 recruit in the country by Line Drive Media, playing at catcher. Haven Roebuck, 2023-2024 Conference Player of the Year, 3-time 3A All-Conference selection. And Daigle Wilson, also another great player, ranked number 22 in the country by prep softball. So an absolutely great class. Malvos are balling over there. Cannot wait to see how their first season goes. I am super excited for Auburn softball. I would love to go to as many games as possible. So hopefully my schedule works out for that. So last thing to talk about before we get out of here, Auburn soccer getting past round 1 of the NCAA tournament, beating FIU 4-1. Moving on, taking on number 10 Ohio State in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, this Friday at 1 o'clock p.m. CST. So Auburn soccer doing some great things over there on the field. So that does it for this time of the College League Podcast. Of course, thank everybody for watching and tuning in. Let me know in the comment section below, what do you think? Where do you think this class is going to end up, the 2025 recruiting class for Auburn football? Do you think we're sticking in the top 5? Do you think some guys are going to flip? What's your confidence level on a lot of these guys going forward? And of course, how do you think Walker White did against ULM? Rate them on 1 to 10. That'll be the nice little engagement comment section right there for us. But of course, I'm Dylan Larck, AboyTank on Twitter. Find me on Instagram as well at Dylan Larck, DYLENLARCK. And of course, you can follow us right in the College League Podcast. Would like, comment, subscribe. Again, I cannot overstate my thanks for everybody getting us to 900 subscribers over here. So working our way to 1,000. Don't forget to check out the audio versions of the show as well on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music. And of course, all that being said, thank you all for tuning in. And as always, War Eagle.